Come see how to proxy Mortarion, the demon Primarch of Nurgle, for the low price of $10. And that's not all. I'm going to take it one step further to show you how to create an entire Death Guard army for that same $10 investment. So let's get to work. I started my Death Guard army when GW refreshed the range in the 8th edition. I've always enjoyed the Nurgle aesthetic, but I could never justify paying well over $100 for Mortarion, no matter how cool that model is. So when I saw this model, I knew it was Morty time. I printed the model on my Illigu Saturn II, and even with its large print area, it took 2 full build plates to print all 18 pieces. That doesn't even include the base. I decided that I wanted to create my own base for this model. I did want the main connection point from the base, however, so I decided to open up the base in Mesh Mixer and cut away all the pieces of the base except for the stone pillar he connects to. Adding the piece to my base will create a simple way to mount my new Morty. I exported the files in STL, then used CheetahBox to create supports and print it out. I started this one off with some cork to start forming the landmass. It took a bit of time playing around with the pieces I had to get an idea of what direction I was going to go in. I decided to sacrifice a couple pieces of my GW Manufactorum terrain to use on the base. Anytime you're building a proxy model for a specific game, it helps to add familiar pieces of the world to the base to help sell your model and show that it lives in the same world. Then broke out the Crayola air dry clay. This stuff is heavy, so I wanted to build out with a lightweight cork so I could use less clay. You could easily use Milliput or any other putty that you have, but this is super cheap. You know, struggling YouTuber and all. Once the clay was set down, I pushed a bark chip for a large rock, some of the terrain, and the stone pillar that serves as the model's connection point. Make sure you test its positioning with the model to make sure all the angles work. Once I had a start that I was happy with, I let the clay set overnight. The next day, I wanted to continue adding to the base. I broke out some Vallejo texture paste to create the actual surface. I used an oil painting palette knife to spread the large amounts onto the base, then used a wet brush for the finer details. I then added the remainder of the GW terrain I was using, making it look as though a platform had fallen onto the ruins. I find the more layers you add, the more immersive the world becomes. So I added some wires and skulls to finish off the base. I went back and forth on whether I should glue the model to the base. I'm going with pretty much everything separate, at least to prime the model. This is a large model with a lot of pieces, so I think ultimately it'd be easier to paint everything separately and glue it all together in the end. I did, however, to decide to glue the main body to the base.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
It was then time to prime the whole model. I started off, as I often do, priming with Molotov Signal Black through my airbrush. There are times that if I can save time and not bother with the black, I will. But in this case, with so much metal on this model, it makes sense. Speaking of metal, I used the airbrush and base all the metal on the model. For this, I'm using Vallejo Metal Color Burnt Iron. The metal color line is designed for the airbrush, so it's in line with how I airbrush. I tend to only use paints made for the airbrush, so I don't have to futz around with thinning, which slows things way down. The burnt iron is similar to a gunmetal like Citadel Lead Belcher. This will be the mid color for the metallics. I want some place to get lighter, and I will shade areas down darker later. Once I have all the metal based, it's time to really get into the underpainting. I move to Molotov Purple Violet and cover all the skin areas, which will end up being the shadow and recess color. Then, for the Death Guard armor, I will spray Molotov Future Green to base coat all the panels. I did a quick base coat of the ground with Molotov Ochre Brown Light. At this point, he looks like a roid-raging green goblin. But bear with me, there are always going to be ugly stages along the way. It's time to add the Zenithal highlight for this. First, I'm going to use Dalarowney Flesh Tint and Zenithal all their Death Guard armor panels and skin. With the armor, the idea isn't just the Zenithal highlight. I'll be looking to imitate how light reflects off different shapes, so when it comes over the top with the transparent paints, you get a nice gradient with a little effort, but still mimics how light works. I could use white ink for this, but I use Flesh Tint because it gains me a little bit of a yellowish tint to the armor, which I think works well for Death Guard armor. On the skin, the flesh tint will be the mid color, so I'll just need to build up value with a sickly flesh color. Being strategic with these underpainting techniques leads to speed, as well as simplifying the brushwork later, to eliminate frustration and foster maximum enjoyment from the process. You might be wondering where this model comes from. You might not be surprised to know that it's from Archvillian Games. They were gracious enough to set me up with their February sci-fi release, Transcended Resurgance, so I can make this video. As soon as I saw this collection, I knew this would be a great 40k Death Guard proxy opportunity. Not only can you proxy Mortarion with this set, but many other units. Here's the breakdown of which units you can use. The way I see it, you can easily get over 1,000 points or more for this $10 investment, which would easily save you over $500 if you factor in the cost of resin. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future they create a Transcended Resurgence Part 2 and fill out the range even more. I know I'm going to keep my eye open for it. An entire Death Guard army for $10 or $20 sounds pretty awesome to me. So get to your tribes or Patreon and pick up this release before it's too late. And while we're at it, check out the Nautiloid. This legendary astral ship has been completely reworked and it's huge. Easily the biggest Nautiloid ship that you can print. It even has an 80mm playable interior. It launches as the Frontiers campaign on My Mini Factory Monday, February 19th at 2 p.m. GMT. Make sure you support early so you don't miss the 48-hour early bird model, the Gith Samurai. You'll be saving 60 to 70% off of MSRP by getting in on this campaign, and they already have some milestones planned to add even more value. Those Encephalid models are fucking awesome, and were some of the first models I ever purchased from them. If you didn't already know, you can always expect the highest quality and impeccable detail from anything that comes from Archvillian. So go check it out. The links are in the description below. Again, while you're at it, click the link that's under that one and go get notified for their Kickstarter that's coming out soon. Erevan's Guide to Death and Beyond. 350 plus page 5e undead themed campaign tome that you're not going to want to miss. Just check out this new class, the Jailer Paladin. They even produced a model for this badass unburied king from the campaign teaser. Check it out. With the undercoat finished, it's time to finally break out the brush. To this point, I've only spent around an hour and a half, and with this Zenithal base set, the rest of the steps will be quicker and less painful. Next in the process, I break out Citadel Balthasar Gold and base coat the metals that I feel like are either ornamental or perhaps make up certain parts that require that kind of material. Whether it's a conductivity thing, a heat or corrosion resistance thing, or whatever it could be. I'm always making decisions with my colors based on technology that exists in the model's world. It often keeps me from getting analysis paralysis. It's not really up to me. The world dictates what material is and how it should work. This may end up being the longest part of the process, but well worth it to add some interest to all the metal on this model. Next, I wanted to bring up the brightness of the steel metallics, so I go with dry brushing. Army Painter plate metal to areas that light will hit most, like the edges of panels, those kinds of things. The next two steps go a long way to finish the base coats. First, I took Citadel Contrast Militarum Green and thinned it 50-50 with Contrast Medium, then used it to base coat all the armor panels. Thinning the contrast is important in this step so you can see the value sketch of the undercoat. Next, I do the same thing with Contrast Magos Purple and Contrast Medium. Again, 50-50, and cover all the exposed skin. Magos Purple is already a pretty thin contrast paint, so thinning it even further ensures it slides into all the recesses, which is what we want to show the sores and swelling of the skin. I also used unthinned Magos Purple for his hood. To finish off some odds and ends, I used Flesh Terror's Red to paint in some of the wires around the model, and Black Templar to base coat many of the hoses. At this point, it's starting to really take shape. Now the skin just needs some sickly looking highlights. For this, I put Rakarth Flesh and Pallid Witch Flesh on my wet palette. Then blended a mid-tone of them two, roughly 50-50. Then used the three colors to wet blend and layer up the highlights. I definitely wasn't overly concerned about getting juicy blends on this. I think with the grotesque nature of this model's skin, it lends itself to not needing to be perfect and still be effective. The armor is already looking pretty good. I could add some edge highlighting, but honestly, I'm not always a huge fan of that style. Next, the hood. I mixed Molotov Violet Dark with Rakarth Flesh, about 50-50, as the highlight color, and just hit the creases where the light would naturally hit it. That was pretty much all the highlighting I did, and I could have stopped there, but I wanted more grim dark. So I broke out the oils. I ended up going with just two oils, Witten Color Signal Black and Burnt Umber. The umber shaded and grimed up the base and the Balthasar Gold metal and the armor panels, while the black went over the rest of the metallics. Then I used makeup sponges and a little mineral spirits to remove the oils from the areas I didn't want it. Mostly anything that didn't look good, and upward facing parts of the model. And that was it. Pretty quick and painless, dirt and grime. My Morty's gonna rip some shit on the battlefield, so I hope you like it. Why don't you let me know in the comments which expensive big bad GW models you want me to proxy next. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. And here's the final reveal. time to give you all a heartfelt thank you for watching my videos. It means a lot to me, and I hope you enjoy the time we spend together. Thanks to you, my channel has finally crossed over to be monetized on YouTube, so I can actually start making money. All money I receive will go back into the channel so I can continue to make the best videos I can for you guys. If you really enjoy a specific video, giving a super thanks will let me know how much you like that video, and I should make more similar to it. Every little bit will help the channel, and it's much appreciated. Thanks!